Greetings, Poe fans. Welcome back for another episode of the 6 Degrees of Poe. I am Carmen Bolden.
And I'm Jeannie Smith. And we
we
are
are the
the
Potastic
Potastic
2.
Two.
Jeannie, we've got to rehearse that because we have been messing that up every single time, past couple times.
And we can't even call it jet lag. We just call it video lag. That's what we'll call it.
I think I'm going to call it summer lag from being out of school right now.
All right, that works. I like that one better.
All right. Well, tonight on our episode, we are not alone. It's not just me and Jeannie. We have some guests, and we're going to let them introduce themselves, and they are the Creature Preachers. And so, Greg and Gary, if you guys want to go ahead and take it away.
Okay, let's see if we can do it. We are the Creature Preachers.
That sounded great.
Yeah, they did it much better than we did.
Yes.
We had the benefit of being in the same room, though, so it was a little unfair.
That's true. That is very true.
But yeah, we are the Creature Preachers. We are a horror surf band from the darkest depths of the Georgia swamps, as we like to call ourselves.
That is awesome. And Jeannie and I were talking about it. So where is the Georgia swamps?
So my backyard.
Well, yeah, kind of his backyard. So we're from Warner Robins, Georgia, which is central Georgia. So like it's not super swampy, but that's just kind of our shtick.
Absolutely.
You know, swamp.
But actually, geologically speaking, it's right on the fault line.
Yeah.
So
okay. we have swamps, but it's not like
right. We don't live in the bayou.
It's not bayou.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So how long have you guys been making music?
See, that's a good way to ask that question, because to ask how long have we been a surf band, maybe 3 years, but playing music together, oh my God, like 20 years.
So we're brothers. So we've been playing music since, I mean, he started playing
like in middle school. Like
you were like 10 years old or something.
1999.
So I was kind of the first musician in the band. I'm older. I started playing when I was about 13. And then started showing him some stuff when he was about 10-ish. And then we both kind of developed independently. We never really played together just because with the age difference. And then, I moved out of the house. And so we kind of had our own bands and stuff. And we both joined the military. So it really wasn't until after we were both, out of the military, already married, already had kids, and then finally lived in the same town that we were able to be in a band together. And that started
2016
when
Okay.
And we had a couple of different bands, kind of. So our background is really kind of metal and punk and indie.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is our not our first attempt at a surf band, but our first successful attempt at a surf band. So
okay, very cool.
But this was the pandemic project. 2020 is when this band started.
Okay, I was going to ask if the pandemic affected your music at all, and I figured the answer is yes, but
yeah, that's really when we got started. We both knew it was something we wanted to do, and we both knew that with the pandemic, everything being locked down, that we were still kind of in the same bubble, being family and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew that we could just kind of lock down and just work on stuff, and then we pretty quickly started putting stuff out. We put out our first EP that year, 2020.
It was 5 cell phone recordings.
Yeah, it was recorded on a cell phone. But that's Horror Hymns. But that's on on the Spotify and all the streams and on Bandcamp and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then same year we put out our second EP, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's Halloween Hullabaloo, so it's a Halloween themed EP. And that's 7 songs. So 2 EPs and that. So that's how much stuff we were able to write and finish and record and put out just in that year alone. So
wow, that's a lot.
We were busy, so
yeah. Oh, no, that's cool. We started our podcast. This is about the end of our second year. And Jeannie, I wish we would have started during the pandemic because we had a whole lot more time on our hands, but that's okay. I think it was stewing in our brains back then, and then just kind of researching to see how to do everything. So totally understand. But a lot of people I meet, a lot of things happened during the pandemic that changed, their life and their hobbies and future careers and everything else.
Hey, we could even blame Poe a bit for the pandemic. Mask of the Red Death. You could
Yes,
say it's his fault. He
that is very
started all
true. That's very true.
Always topical.
that. Exactly. But when Carmen was telling me about you guys, my first thing that hit me that I really wanted to know is how did you come up with the name Creature Preachers?
Man, so Greg has a knack for naming things. Like
I've named every band I've ever had for whatever reason. I'm decent at that. But so the idea of this band, and we haven't really fully realized it yet. We're still kind of in that process. But the idea of the band, it was kind of inspired by if you read a lot of Southern Gothic or even watch kind of Southern Gothic movies, a lot of the time there's this kind of twisted preacher character, not necessarily evil sometimes, but this kind of weird, twisted, perverted preacher character, like in Night of the Hunter, in Wise Blood. There's these kind of weird preachers. So, and we knew originally we were kind of going for a folk horror kind of motif, which we still kind of are, but we wanted to go a more Southern, kind of version of that, which is, Southern Gothic. And so we decided that we're going to do the whole kind of evil preacher, which is where Creature Preachers comes from. And so, like I said, we haven't quite fully realized that as far as like our aesthetic and our look. We're still kind of working on that. But it was good. We knew the idea was good, so we went ahead and
it just rolls off the tongue so well.
It sounds good.
It's just one of those things where you can think of a really cool band name, but then as soon as you say it out loud, and then someone says, "That's your band name," it suddenly becomes very uncool. And Creature Preachers really lasted the test of time. People were like, "Oh, the Creature Preachers."
Yeah, people seem to like it.
Yeah, they understood it. They got it. It's not a lot of explanation required.
Well, I know that when I first heard it, you were talking about the Southern Goth and the different things like the, shall I say, the bastardization of the preachers in the horror films. I came up with the poltergeist. The poltergeist preacher perfectly embodies when I hear Creature Preacher, because that guy, he was just creepy. He was just creepy. So not only does it roll off the tongue, but it's one of those things that it just automatically, if you have any kind of love of any kind of Gothic or horror, you'll automatically attach yourself to one of those characters. So that was very interesting to me to hear the name. But then also, I'm like, I can understand the horror, but where the surf? Because I'm thinking Georgia surf, and I was kidding with Carmen, and I said, "What are they surfing? Alligators?" I mean, I can see them in the swampland surfing on some alligators, So, and I did read some of your bio said something about Beach Boys. So, can you hit upon how that kind of just stuck with you?
Yeah. So, as a kid, we had this Beach Boys Greatest Hits cassette in the car, which was kind of on steady rotation. This was more when I was little, not so much when he was.
Yeah.
And so I love that stuff. And for the longest time, that's what I thought. I thought if it was surf music, it was the Beach Boys. I didn't know that was like a genre, but I loved that sound. And it wasn't until later in the 90s when surf was kind of making a resurgence with stuff like the Pulp Fiction soundtrack. And another big one for me personally is the theme song to The Kids in the Hall, the sketch comedy show. That theme song. So that's when it really hit. And I realized, oh, there's an entire, world of surf music that I knew that I liked it, but I didn't know what it was. And it wasn't until, I heard it and our mom explained it. She was like, yeah, it's surf rock, like adventures and stuff like that. I'm like, what even is this? Like, I gotta know more. I gotta have more. So I bought the Pulp Fiction soundtrack. I bought Adventure's Greatest Hits and just immediately fell in love. But at the same time, there was already kind of a natural spookiness to it, just with all the minor chords and the reverb and the tremolo bends and all that kind of stuff. And I always wanted, I was like, there has to be a spooky version of this. And when I discovered the Ghastly ones, also kind of later in the 90s, I was like, oh, this is it. This is
what
I want to do for the rest of my life. And it took a really long time, you know, because like I said, we were punk and metal guys. And it was super intimidating to try to get into surf, because it's such a it's really like guitarist music, you know what I mean? So it's not just anybody that can hold a guitar can play surf. And I started off as a drummer, so I went from drums to bass guitar to guitar. So this is my weakest instrument, and I'm trying to play this, you know, virtuoso guitarist kind of music. So that was really intimidating. So it took a long time for us to finally say, okay, we have to do this. It's something we've been talking about for years. And so finally, like I said, with the pandemic, we're like, well, now's the time. So.
Well, and another thing about the surf that I was thinking, and brought me back, not just the Beach Boys, but I was thinking when it come to horror surf, I don't know why this always hit me, but every time I would watch Scooby-Doo, it's like the music of Scooby-Doo was like a horror surf type music. So, and it was during that time frame of the Beach Boys and stuff. So I could very much, when I was listening to your music, I was very much could play the Scooby-Doo cartoons in my head while I was listening. So yeah, it very much brought a lot of imagery to me. So that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, we were both raised on Scooby-Doo, so all of that is always in our head.
Yes.
You know.
Absolutely.
Those darn kids.
Yes.
Yeah. My parents grew up they were teenagers in the mid 50s. And so I grew up, I was a late in life baby. And so in the 70s, I still, like, we had record player and everything, and I would listen to their old records of the Ventures, the Beach Boys, and others. And so that was very prevalent to me. So I have always loved, since I was just wee little girl, surf music. And so you guys adding that spooky vibe to it is even better, because I love gothic horror. And so it's amazing. You guys are amazing to see in performing. So
well, and I was just looking at the picture behind Carmen's head of Edgar Allan Poe. He reminds me of the preacher from Poltergeist. So I think Edgar fits with that, the creature preacher. He would definitely be a creature preacher because of all those wonderful horror stories, in my opinion. But okay.
Yeah. Jeannie, you're going to make me go watch Poltergeist, which I haven't seen in years, later on tonight after we're done. You talking about it so much.
They're here. I'm just saying.
So with kind of talking about like gothic horror and things like that, were there any influences for you guys growing up, and even just as an adult, of different authors that you read, in school, on your own, anything like that?
Like, it's funny that I'm least familiar with Edgar Allan Poe's work. Of course, through school, you read Telltale Heart, Raven. Those most folks know. And I think it was in high school when I really got into Ambrose Bierce, which not exactly the same time frame, but definitely, like, I think in the same ballpark. Love his just storytelling, short stories. They really fit with me. And even like there was a whole episode of The Twilight Zone dedicated to an occurrence on Alfred Bridge. So that for me,
there's a lot of that.
Oh my God. So I even wrote songs about certain ones. Killed in Rosaka, one of my favorite ones. So I just Ambrose Bierce, and I think his work informs a lot of like my storytelling and music.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, like, and Garrett can tell you, when I was a teenager, I have notebooks of the cringiest poetry and song lyrics you could possibly think of, and all of that stuff was inspired by all those romantic guys, like Poe and Hawthorne and Thoreau and all those people. I loved all of that, and the spookier, the better. So all of that, yeah, and he can tell you.
And then you got H.P. Lovecraft.
H.P. Lovecraft was one of my favorite authors. Like, and it was through those guys, that I introduced to all that stuff. So that was a huge influence on me, not just how I wrote, but just to introduce you to all this horror stuff, all these layers. That as you start working back, you can see, okay, what a huge influence Poe was on H.P. Lovecraft and how H.P. Lovecraft was a huge influence on guys like Stephen King and how
Mhm.
far.
Yeah, it's incredible with Poe was not the original Gothic author, but he was one of the first. I read a book earlier, let's see, was it earlier this year or late last year? I can't remember. It's called Wieland. I can't remember the author's name, and I can't see it over on my shelf right now. But it's considered one of the first Gothic novels, and it was written earlier in the 1800s before Poe was born, and it's a very interesting book and very it's has ghost like things going on in there, and then I'm not going to give it away in case you ever do read it, but it's odd. It was I was not as impressed with it as I was hoping to be. But I always wondered if did Poe read this and as a kid possibly.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jeannie, what was you had? I know you had a couple questions other than me.
Oh, well, I've talked about the names and the surfing alligators, which I think that would be really cool to surf some alligators to your music. That'd be cool. Uh, and as I was reading your list of influences, I was thinking, hey, yeah, definitely I can see some CCR being in there, the Bad Moon Rising, definitely the thing, the B-52s, all that. So I was really impressed with your influences. And now I was a little confused. Now you said you originally, now is it Greg, right? Greg.
Yeah.
Yes. Greg, you said you originally started on the drums, then you went to the bass, and now you're on the regular guitar. How, I mean, explain a little bit about the differences between the instruments. I know I can play the piano, but when I tried to learn how to play the guitar, it just wasn't the same. I knew the chords and knew could read the music, but it was just such different, I guess, dexterity is what I'm trying to get at. So playing the type of music that you do in these types of instruments, how does that, for people who aren't musically inclined, how difficult?
Difficult. So I don't know. I guess I'm lucky in the fact that music kind of came natural. Like I'm self-taught with all my instruments, right?
Nice.
And I taught myself. So I started teaching myself drums when I was about 13, and I didn't own a drum set until I was like 18. So I had a pair of sticks, and I would play like on my bed, or I'd play in the air, and I knew where the drums were supposed to be. So I'd listen to a song, and I'd say, okay, this is over here, this is over here. And I just kind of taught myself that way. And then when I started playing in bands, I'd have to use somebody else's drum set. And then once I had kind of got comfortable with that, I started moving towards bass. And bass is a good start. If you're going to do string instruments, bass is a good start because it's only 4 strings. And most of the time you're only playing one string at a time. So started learning simple stuff. Like, I came up, listening to all the grunge stuff like Nirvana and all that stuff. So relatively simple, mostly, and the Misfits, that's my favorite band. So stuff like that, kind of simple, kind of punky. And then when I got comfortable on bass, I was like, okay, I'll play a little bit of guitar. But again, starting off with just the basic kind of punk power chords, which is, almost anybody can kind of start doing almost immediately. But I think, drums is still my strongest instrument and probably my favorite instrument. But even when I play guitar, I'm still, with the riffs I write, even just the style that I play, I still kind of play it like a bass player. I'm still all rhythm. That's kind of, and when we do, so we're both playing guitar when we play live. And that's kind of the roles we've kind of landed in, where I'm more rhythm, more bass heavy, and he's more the lead, more the jangly. Because he's a better guitar player than I am. So he can do like the weird chords and the all this stuff. So I'm just back here like, dun, 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 and he's doing all the cool stuff. So yes, like I said, so not a very good guitar player. I'm still working on that.
Okay.
But both of us, we write, record everything on our albums and stuff. Garrick also plays keyboard, which like I said, all self-taught. So, but when we play live, it's usually we just added a fifth member. We used to be usually four, where we're both playing guitar. We have a drummer, bass player, and Garrick would split up between guitar and keyboard, but now we have an actual dedicated keyboard player now. So.
Oh, nice. That's cool.
Good. Yeah, I was kind of curious about how when you start writing your songs, do you kind of write it from a drummer point of view and then move it to guitar? Is that kind of how you do it?
We do all of it. And what I mean by that is it's so fun to start a song with just a rhythm, and then the guy with the guitar goes, "Okay, cool, I feel that. Let's like just around." Or someone starts something on the bass, and then we're like, "Okay, cool, that's a groove. Okay, let's get it." And then you can use any instrument to start the jam, and if it kind of builds into something cool, then there you got a song. And that's our first two releases was the result of just Greg on drums, me on guitar, pretty much.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, usually most of the time it's one of us will have a riff. Whoever wrote the riff is playing guitar. And then the other guy is going to play drums, and then we're going to jam out, on guitar and drums, and just on that riff, and then usually a new part.
Yeah.
We'll kind of pop it. Okay, we'll go to this new part. And it just slowly kind of builds from there. Yeah. So that's how we prefer to do it. It's just one guy on guitar, one guy on drums. Whoever wrote the riff is playing guitar.
Oh, yeah. And I think my favorite songs of ours are the ones where if Greg comes up with part A, we'll like really bash it out, and I'll come up with the part B. Yeah. And then we're gonna have to figure out what the bridge part is.
Those are and the song, the Haunted Swamp. That's a great example. It's one of the reasons why it's our favorite and why we wanted to have the single, because it's literally like 50-50. I wrote that first riff, he wrote the second riff, and then middle section we wrote together at the same time,
simultaneously.
So and those are always my favorite ones, where it's like right split down the middle, between writing credits.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that's your favorite, because I was about to ask you, do you have a favorite? Because just looking at all of the songs that you've done and listened to, most of them, I couldn't imagine, like, to me it would be hard to pick what you've written to be like your favorite. So that's really cool.
I actually think probably the song I'm most proud of, because we actually did real research to get there.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
So for that, that's more your thing.
So Krampus, right? It's sort of this Southern German, bad guy Santa, right? There's a movie about it. So we wanted to write a kind of spooky Christmas song. And
Krampus, first, let me say it was my wife's idea.
There it is.
Because she will kill me if I don't give her. It was her idea.
And I've met your wives, and they're amazing. So we did crafts together.
On the record, it was her idea to do a spooky Christmas song.
Okay.
So with our,
we were set to figure it out, and we had just watched like some kind of like video clip, like I think it was like a Vox documentary, just like some sort of like 5-minute long little thing about the history of this particular melody. And what's the name of it? I forget.
It is the Dies Irae. It's Latin for the Day of Wrath. Okay. And so it was a series of notes that they used to play in medieval churches, literally to put the fear of God in people. Yeah, that's how spooky and scary it was.
Yeah, it's this musical motif that's been used in like all kinds of just creepy cathedral music.
Yeah.
And the interval is like da 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 da, and that sounds so creepy. And we're like, yo, that is the riff.
It's been used in a lot of soundtracks, of course, like The Shining is a good example.
Exactly. Yeah.
But whenever they want to build this kind of tension, they'll go for those series of notes. And so we were like, okay, well, let's put that into the song. So the intro is that motif, but also the riff, that main riff, is built around it.
That is really cool. And you said it translates over to was it the Day of Wrath?
Day of Wrath. Let me make sure I'm
okay
right on that.
Because what I was going to do once we edit and put the episode out is we always do a list of resources or references, and I can add a link in there for our listeners, because they might enjoy like seeing that or hearing that. So yeah, very cool. So other than like we talked about kind of authors, some of your favorites or any inspiration from that. What about pop culture and things like that? Because you've already mentioned like several bands that really inspired you. Anything in pop culture with the horror genre?
We're both huge horror nerds. Like
We are too.
even just like when we were talking about Scooby Doo, like I got my start early, with watching Scooby Doo.
Joe Bob Briggs.
Oh my god!
That's
yeah, so Monster Vision with Joe Bob Briggs on TNT. Like,
oh boy,
grew up watching that.
Yeah, man.
Oh, and I can remember. Some of my earliest memories are watching Ripley's Believe It or Not when Jack Palance was hosting it.
So creepy.
Yes.
And so,
yes.
So from the earliest age, anything that was paranormal, supernatural, I ate it up. And so obviously horror movies, that just was a natural extension of that.
And in the 90s, I think it was the perfect era to be a weird kid, because you have like Twin Peaks, X-Files,
also big Twin Peaks,
the movie The Craft, Charm, Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah, there was a lot of weird and horror stuff going on in the 90s. So it was easy, to be.
Yeah, I agree. And I was going to say, because I think Bram Stoker's Dracula with Gary Oldman, I think, came out in 93, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, there a lot of modern horror came out of that decade, I guess you could say. And yeah, and it's amazing stuff.
In the DVD horror era from like 1999 to I think 2006, you had all these, I guess, like maybe like a renaissance of horror movies they weren't like direct to DVD or anything, but it's almost like you had The Ring, Darkness Falls, House on Haunted Hill. There was just a new era of horror that was coming out, and I was all about it.
Yeah, and we were like, we were right in the kind of that window of, we still got a lot of the video rental VHS kind of horror, that whole boom, but still like, so old enough to where we got that, but still young enough to where we were, still a lot of the 90s and early 2000s horror, when there was that kind of resurgence with stuff like Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer and all that kind of stuff.
Final Destination. Yeah.
Oh yeah, gosh, we could go on and on and on making a list.
Yeah.
So what about like thinking about the whole creature and like thinking of Creature from the Black Lagoon? What about Universal monsters? What does that have an influence at all?
Well, my first tattoo was stitches,
Frankenstein
stitches.
Oh, nice, nice.
I think Frankenstein was my favorite book, so I was attached to that book, and I think it was significant that was my first tattoo.
There was a period of probably about 5 or 6 years where I dressed as Dracula every single year for Halloween, and like the classic Dracula.
Oh, that is very cool. That is very cool. Jeannie, what other questions do you have?
Well, they're bringing up some great movies that have popped in there. But one of the things I would like to say is that the only true thing that I love about the horror movies is if they've got the right music. Because you can't have the story if you don't have the music. And that's one of the things, like, Poltergeist to me was creepy because it had those weirdness factor, but it had that suspenseful music. And I think with your music, bringing in the horror surf, you're combining that wonderful thing, and you're telling the story. And it's like with Poe, you can hear it, and you can build your own little horror story in your mind, in your imagination, with the wording, with the music. And that's the one thing that I love about it. And I think you guys have brought together two very main components to a genre that needed it. The classics, just the things to have a resurgence. Because I hate to say it, the horror they have now, I don't see it as horror. I mean, come on. I'm like, you're getting a little redundant. Let's go back to the good old days, like the original Frankenstein of 1934. That is a horror to me. They don't have all the blood, the guts, and all this kind of. Now, I do love some Final Destination. Don't get me wrong. Now, that's just cool. Let's see how many ways we can, kill somebody. I'm just saying.
Jeannie goes dark a lot,
I
so
do.
you have to excuse her.
Yeah, yeah. I go into little dark places.
I
Go
think
ahead.
for me, I think the perfect horror movie is probably Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just for pacing, entertainment value, shock value, soundtrack. Oh my god!
I mean, the combination,
Oh,
of, you know, horror. But like what to your point though about modern horror, like I think mainstream horror really is garbage right now. But when you look at like A24 is putting out, like some of the indie horror, I think is some of the best horror movies to come out like in decades. I mean, when you look at stuff like Barbarian, Midsummer, The Witch, The Lighthouse, like all these, like Ari Aster and Robert Eggers, these guys. I mean, they've become some of my favorite horror movies, and it's like this is all recent stuff, but you do kind of have to dig for it a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I would totally agree with you on that. And sometimes it's a lot of trial and error of watching it to see, is it going to produce, that feeling of, the horror, the scariness and everything. Definitely.
Can I tell you a little story?
Yeah.
So this is like a decade ago, and I had never seen the Jessica Alba movie, The Eye, is that what it's called? Where basically she's blind and gets an eye transplant, and insert some sort of horror hijinks, and she's being possessed by the previous owner of the eyeballs. And I thought, oh, wow, what a great concept! It's going to be good. And it was a terrible movie. I felt nothing. It was a terrible movie. I hated it. And I was so just pissed off. I was just really upset that the movie had never really, got above just, any kind of climactic level. And then, funny enough, the very next movie that came on, I think I was watching HBO. It was the movie The Mist, right? And it's a pretty good movie, but the end is what killed me. And I was so happy that after watching The Eye, feeling nothing, the end of The Mist,
I'm feeling gutted.
Oh my god, completely gutted.
Oh, I've got to pause real quick and we'll cut this out. I'm going to let it just keep recording, but you guys keep talking. We ordered some meat from a man and he's at the door and my husband's out of town. So I will be right back.
Well, speaking of, I think it was called The Eye that you were talking about. That just kind of made me think, and I can't think of the name of the movie, but I think it was a 70s or an 80s movie that was similar to that, and it had to do with someone that got a hand replacement.
From like a murderer, right?
Yes. And
Yeah,
then
then
he
they start-
started committing all these murders because it was like a serial killer's arm got replaced with his, and he started doing all these. So that's kind of like what I was like, well, now we're going for eyes, but so I can't even remember the name of the movie, but I'm pretty sure it was the 70s or 80s. But yeah, it's some of the horror movies they just kind of they don't go today. And I'll have to look up. You said they were indie movies. What were the names of them again?
So the company is put them as A24, and they do more than just horror, but lately I think they've really been crushing it with horror. But Barbarian, which I don't know if that's A24, but a recent movie called Barbarian quickly became one of my favorite horror movies. And it came out, I guess, last year.
Great sound.
But as far as the A24 stuff, there's The Lighthouse, Hereditary, The Witch, Midsummer, and these are mostly kind of folk horror. Like that's kind of my favorite subgenre of horror. But those are all fantastic. They're well made, they're well shot, they're well acted. They have a lot of great. The cast are always fantastic. So definitely check those out.
It's good because I think that movies that could exist outside of a potential franchise, they have this freedom of being left alone.
Yes. Yes.
And I think A24, just thank God for them. You know, there's some money behind them, and they're allowing those artists to do their job. Kind of like Stanley Kubrick. He was able to garner so much respect and credibility that they just kind of gave him a budget and said, "Hey, man, do your thing," and he came up with just historic that are always going to be some of my favorites.
What about Mandy? Have you seen Mandy?
What is it called again?
Mandy. It's a Nicolas Cage movie.
I don't think I think I've heard of it. Maybe.
Yeah.
That one.
Love that. That's a must watch.
Is that the one, the little girl?
No, that's Megan or whatever.
Okay, yeah, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
No, I haven't heard of the Mandy one.
So Mandy, I think it came out in 2018, thereabouts. So it's recent.
Okay.
Great.
Oh man, it is wonderful. It's like this revenge quest. It's all set. It's amazing.
And it's got an 80s feel to it. It's very kind of almost ethereal. The soundtrack is very 80s.
Oh, very cool. Okay.
Really good.
Yeah.
Definitely got to look that up.
Yeah, I wrote it down. I've seen The Lighthouse, and that was amazing. Everything was just excellent in that whole thing.
The Lighthouse really turned me around on Robert Pattinson because
yes.
Right, and he kind of done a few after that, but I'm like, Robert Pattinson. But I tell you what, I saw The Lighthouse. I'm like, yes,
yep, that's him.
Robert Pattinson.
That's him.
Yeah,
that's a movie watched alone.
All right.
Yeah, Jeannie, you need to check that one out too. It's really very good.
Well, every time I hear the term lighthouse, I automatically think of Virginia Woolf. So I'll have to definitely watch that one so it'll get her out of my mind. Because, her suicide and at the lighthouse,
Well, and Poe has an unfinished short story. It's one of the last ones he worked on called The Lighthouse. I have not read it, but it's on my reading list. And so I'm kind of anxious to read that one. So when is your next single or album coming out?
So the album right now is at the vinyl pressing plant.
Okay.
So we're coming out on vinyl. So it's going to be in the next month or so, but we still got to wait and see what the pressing plant says, because it all kind of depends on their schedule and when they can put it out. And once we have a firm bid on that, we'll probably put the digital album, Spotify and Pandora and all that stuff around the same time, probably like a little after. We'll kind of stagger it. But we plan on the first single being Haunted Swamp, which will probably be out in August.
Yeah,
probably.
Okay. Oh yeah, that is really soon. That's awesome. And when is your next show? Like, when are you guys performing next?
Actually, this weekend.
in 2 days.
We're playing in Pinehurst, North Carolina.
Okay, where is that close to?
I have no idea.
If I remember correctly, Pinehurst, North Carolina is on the western side, up near Mars Hill area, I think.
Okay.
So now, don't quote me on that.
Now, we won't.
I sometimes get those confused because I had family from Pembroke, and I lived just on the other side of the hill from Asheville. So I've been to Pinehurst, but that's been many years ago. It's beautiful country.
Okay. So all right. So that's this coming weekend. And then do you guys have other shows lined up, especially for your album release?
Yeah. So that is, that's this weekend, which that was some fans that contacted us. They got married recently, and they're throwing a party to celebrate the wedding, and they contacted us and asked if we would play it. So we're
oh my gosh, that is so neat.
So it's supposed to be Tiki / Creature from the Black Lagoon theme. So we were like,
nice.
Well, yeah, we're in.
Absolutely.
But our next, we have 2 in August. We're playing a Atlanta roller derby show.
Oh, fun.
Right. So they have a game, they have a match, and they usually have entertainment. So we're playing that, and then so August 19th, I'm playing drums for the Rum Tones, which that's the
gotcha.
It's their friend, and they're also label mates. We're both on Missing Pink Records. They're out of Savannah, Georgia. So they're kind of between drummers, so I'm kind of their interim drummer right now. So I'm playing drums with them on August 19th in Jacksonville, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And then August 24th, the Creature Breeders are playing in Atlanta at the Star Bar.
Okay.
And then, yeah, so those are our most recent shows. We have, in October, we're doing Think Fest, which is something that our label puts together.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all bands from that label, and it's in Savannah. So that's in October 21st.
Okay. Oh, that sounds amazing. And Savannah is such a fun place.
Yeah.
My husband and I went there during the pandemic, and it was very quiet, not a lot of people around that when we went over Memorial Day, and we loved it, and we're eventually going to get back there. I think, Jeannie, you've been there a couple times, haven't you?
Yes. I like Savannah and Charleston. I still hold out a little bit better for Charleston, but they're two great places to visit. They got a lot of history and just the ambiance, especially if you ever go to Savannah. We did a cemetery ghost tour, I guess whatever you want to call it, which was extremely wonderful because hey, the weather decided it wanted to be lightning and cloudy, but no rain. So it was really cool. So walking around a graveyard and lightning in the background, and it was like, yay! Now this is the way this is done.
Very cool.
Now my wife and I, a couple of years ago for our anniversary, we stayed at a haunted hotel and then did a ghost tour one of the nights. So that was fun.
Oh, very cool.
That is really cool. My husband and I, when we travel, we usually make it to a cemetery, like an older cemetery in the area, especially if it's got some kind of historical link that we're interested in. But sometimes we just go to go and walk around and see the beauty of the headstones and things like that. And so, but yeah, staying in a haunted hotel and doing that would be really cool. Very fun. So do your wives like the spooky stuff as much as you guys do?
My wife she was terrified. She didn't sleep the entire night. No, she is the biggest scaredy cat. She can't even watch a commercial for a scary movie. Like, she will be up all night.
Oh no.
But my wife, our first date, we walked in the cemetery.
Nice. That is very
cool. One is an extreme scaredy cat, and the other one is like, let's rock on. All
right. So you guys are going to, I believe, a Poe Speakeasy coming up in, is it August? I think you guys were telling me.
Yeah, me and my wife are going to that up in Atlanta, and I guess it's kind of a traveling thing, but they're coming to Atlanta, and so they have several different drinks, and they're all themed on Poe stories.
Very cool.
And excited about that. We're going to dress up all goth and stuff.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Yeah. And then I think you're going to write up something for us that we're going to share in one of our newsletters.
Sure will.
Yes, and that sounds really cool. We're excited about that, to share that with everybody, because I looked at the dates in the cities, and it looked like it was going through maybe September in different cities, maybe just through the end of August. I can't remember, but hopefully, if it's successful, they'll do more in October, November, December, especially October during the spooky season.
No, definitely, yeah.
So I know you guys said that, Poe is not as big of a influence as some of the other authors and things. Do you have a favorite story or poem by him? We always ask this question of everybody we have on the show. And if you don't, it's totally okay.
So I did research that. I was like, they're going to ask us that question. So I did some reading, and definitely my favorite is Hop Frog.
Yes. That's a great one.
Yep.
This is probably a basic pick, I guess, but Murders in the Rue Morgue was always super scary to me. And it's kind of the beginnings of, the Sherlock Holmes and the detective stories too, which was always really cool to me.
Yeah. that's one of my favorites. And he wrote with that character, see Auguste Dupin. He wrote 3 stories: Murder of Marie Roget, and then The Purloined Letter. And I wished he would have written more of those stories because I really, really enjoyed them. And let's see, I think our first year we actually watched kind of a marathon one day of the 3 versions of Birds in the Rue Morgue. And if you've never seen it, the George C. Scott version from back in, Jeannie, what is it, 87 or 89?
I think it was 87.
Okay, yeah, it's really good. So definitely check that out.
I may have seen that. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I know one of the adaptations.
Okay. Yeah, there's one with Jason Robards. It's not good. He's an excellent actor, but that movie is not very good. And then the original version that actually has Bela Lugosi in it, that was pretty good, but definitely the George C. Scott version is the best. So, all right. Well, anything else you guys want to share with us?
That we haven't covered?
Yeah, that we haven't covered.
Well, we did read. We're gonna say that for later. Words
Some Words with a Mummy.
Some Words with a Mummy.
Yes. And so you guys are going to join us on Poe Unplugged, right? On the 18th,
which is Tuesday.
Yes, it's next Tuesday evening.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll get to talk more about that, and
that's our Unbook Club.
Yes, we get to discuss all the wonderful things of what maybe Poe was thinking.
Yes,
wasn't thinking.
Exactly.
Oh, which brings me, and there was one other thing I wanted to ask you guys. You were talking about how the rhythm and the riffs came to you. What about the lyrics? Would they come with the rhythm of the riffs, or was it like before, after, or at the same time? Does that make sense?
Both and neither, and either one. So a good example. Kurt Cobain, I think even in interviews, basically he would write a riff and then hum a melody that he knew would be kind of good for a vocal line. And he would just strum some chords and hum and hum and hum. And then he would plug in words that'll match the syllables, and it'll go along that way. But then the other end of that is a band like the Shins. You can tell immediately that songwriter has just like pages and pages of notebooks that he fills with all kinds of stuff. In his songs, he's just rattling off words, and he'll end up, kind of going up and down in melody, but it's mostly the lyrics themselves that take precedence over the melody. So it really depends on your own preference, on what matters to you as a songwriter. I think I've done both before.
Yeah, for me, I always do them separately. Like lyrics are their own thing. I never have any kind of melody in mind. I'm just writing lyrics. And then when I write a riff, it's its own thing. I never have words in mind. I'm just writing a riff. Now, sometimes when I'm playing, like Garrett was saying, the vocal melody will kind of pop in your head. But usually I'll write a riff. I'm like, okay, I like that riff. Which one of my lyrics fits, this? Which one of these can I pick around the riff? Because it's way easier to mold lyrics around in music than the other way around.
Okay. Yeah, I was really curious about that because when I do my writing, I love to listen to music while I'm writing, but it's not that I'm writing music. Does that make sense? It's the rhythm of the music that helps me get into the rhythm of writing the story. So I was just kind of curious from a musical standpoint. Like when I used to teach literature, I would always tell the kids that the ones that love the music the most, I'm like, guys, the story is the lyrics, and you may love the rhythm, but the rhythm is also its own type of story. Because sometimes you don't even need words.
Absolutely.
I was just going to say, Cormac McCarthy is one of my favorite authors because his prose is so lyrical.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
one of my favorite books by him is No Country for Old Men. I love that book. I read it in a day. I couldn't put it down. It was so good.
Yes. So, and it's good to know those types of things because, like you said, you guys are self-taught, and not everybody, are trained artists or trained writers. They just, it's just something that they fall into. So I always like to know kind of the process for everybody. And so someone who's self-taught with music, I was just kind of curious, does the lyrics go with the music go with the lyrics, or are they just two separate pieces, like you were saying? So,
Well,
it's always good to know.
there's a lot of stuff we probably do wrong because we're self-taught.
Hey,
It works.
hey, that's the thing. There is no wrong. I mean, if it's what you do, it's what you do. Nobody has, like that's one thing with Poe. Nobody liked his stuff half the time, but he did it anyway.
That's right. And
So,
a lot of the horror that he wrote was more because that's what sold rather
mhm,
than that was his favorite thing to write because he loved writing satire. And of
mhm.
course, his criticisms were also part of his job and things like that. And so, but I think a lot of things came out of his brain that he truly did love to write as well.
Yeah.
It's
So,
to me, it's hard not to like if you have a purpose for writing something, whether it be a book, story, poem, music, anything like that. There's always an underlying purpose, and it could be money, like for Poe, or it could just be you love it. And sometimes the two meet, and hopefully that's a good thing.
sometimes works together.
Yeah,
But thank you guys
absolutely.
for joining us. I mean, it's been
Yes.
great talking
Oh,
to you and meeting you.
Yes.
And we
yeah.
look forward to Tuesday at the Unplugged so we can talk more with the
Yes.
Yeah.
Words of a Mummy, right? Words with is it Words with a Mummy?
Some words with a mummy.
I always forget the song. I was like, okay, well, okay.
Yeah, and
But
he actually has a few stories that have that Egyptian kind of feel to it, which I think is really cool. So,
oh, we're going to the Bengals. Walk like an Egypt. Okay, sorry.
all right, Jeannie, no.
No, it's okay. I had to go there. Sorry. All right.
Oh, I know, I know.
But
Yes, but
yeah.
this has been great to speak with you guys, and cannot wait to hear your new album.
Mhm.
That'll be exciting, and we look really forward to it. And we look forward to having you guys on for Poe Unplugged next Tuesday.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So until then, we shall
Thank you.
talk again. Bye
Yes.
bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.